sorry, I won't be coming from the technical side, it's more from the kind of the finance and the investment side, as well as the capital, but I have gone through the energy efficiency side as well, so I'll try and keep it short and sweet. So the first part is obviously, this is now the third kind of funding stream that we're going to bring in online. We're not getting now the SIUF, we all had the emergency works ones. We've now done the SIUF this year, and the College of the Future announcements will be coming as well. So they're kind of this is kind of the final funding stream that we're going to be looking at, and as part of it then, it's how we actually are going about doing it. So to give you the overview, it's in conjunction with obviously DEC and with the SEAI. We're doing it similar to what the education have done with regard to their pathfinder, so we'll be using a lot of the same methodologies and all, and the plan is to go through that, to pick out the selection of the process. So for the selection process, how are we coming up with the buildings? And Carol mentioned that there's going to be probably 8. We're probably going to look at 4 training centres and 4 colleges within the actual further education side of the house. Now, with regard to that, then we also looked, it needs to be how do we actually select those. So the criteria we were using was obviously the first part was determine the CO2 as to what actually used, and we're basing it on 2019 because of obviously COVID and the impacts and all that had on it. But we did have a look as well at kind of at the later years to see what the actual energy use was across those buildings and that. So we took an overall look at all the energy, and that's why we need the M&R and the information all fed in through that. Okay, the geographical locations, obviously Dublin has loads of different buildings and everything else, but we didn't want everything just done in Dublin, so we looked to have a mix of kind of geographical locations as well. And the other is the type of buildings. As I said, we have the training centre, we have the colleges, but because this is a pathfinder to find out what is the best way of kind of retrofitting the buildings, and all the buildings are different depending if they're big, small, whatever else. We've got all the schools and different ones, so we're trying to take a mixture of both so that we can get an overall big buildings, small buildings. We know kind of what will work and what won't work. The other one then is we excluded a lot of the ones, as you said, commitment, the likes of Athlone and all would have been high energy users and everything else, but there are already commitments going forward on that within the SIUF and the College of Future again as well. So we kind of stayed away from those programs because we will be putting in the best retrofitting and all stuff into those, but as part of that overall program commitments that are already there. The demonstration then of our commitments. We looked at the ETBs to see, as Carl said, about the partnership agreements and all, and most of the ETBs have signed up. We also were looking at the kind of map training and everything else, because what we're looking for here is an actual engagement by the ETBs with the SEAI. It's to do those kind of cultural stuff. So it's to see that there is a commitment there with the ETB and all to actually do it. Like, it's no point in giving the money and it's not being used or spent. Like, we have to have the commitment. So it's as much on the ground, the cultural stuff, as it is the overall. And the second part then was engaging with the thing. Obviously we have the figures and everything else. Sharon and Charlie said, like, it's no good if the building's on at 8 o'clock at night because your energy use could be through the roof, but it's just a matter of turning off whatever the stuff is. So we are engaging with the ETBs to try and get down more detail into what the actual energy usage is. And that's where the kind of the energy audits and all come in under the SI 426. Like, we do need to have them for all the big buildings and that. So it is looking at all that and seeing which is the best investment for us to put the money into to try and do it. So as I said, this is a pathfinder, and obviously the plan is in future to keep rolling this forward. There was questions asked earlier about the money and as to where that was all coming from and how we're all going to do it. At the moment, we're struggling to spend the money. And that's just because of the public spending code and trying to get all these projects up and running. Now we started kicking off now with the SIUF, the College of the Future will be coming, and the Pathfinder. So we will get these pipeline projects going. So once the pipeline going, then it's going to be picking and choosing as to which projects we do, we actually go with, which is the best investment for us. And it's obviously going to be best be done on the actual investment, what the actual return on the investment is going to be. So what we're going to get for the money we're putting in with regards to the climate action, what savings and all we're going to get. So what is the energy usage and all, and that fits in into the operational budgets as well, because obviously if we're spending on the capital side and we can save it on the operational side, that's great, because we can reinvest that then in other things, okay? The other thing then around all of this is how does it actually fit into the sector? So I'll talk a bit now about the SEAI strategy and where we actually go, so, and the overview. With regard to the actual buildings, as I said, when we do select the 8 buildings, and we're currently working on that and trying to agree the actual capital funding as well. So it's going to be 50-50 between ourselves and SEAI. It's going to be a 3-year program. We're just working out the final details as to what the actual funding alone will be available under that for these 8 programs. Now, we may even increase it more depending on what is the money is available, and obviously the projects are selected now. But we're going to be looking at the different projects then under 4 kind of headings. So it depends what level of retrofitting we can do based on the money and everything else. There's only limited funding available, as I said. So the first one is kind of around the likes of the very first. It's kind of very low level, right up to the kind of NZEB. We do the bells and whistles and everything else on as we push in. So it's looking at the different technologies that we do. So the obvious one to me is kind of the LED lights. There's LED lights in all the buildings because 70%, it's a no-brainer. Like, where it gets more difficult then is obviously the refurbishment there. You've seen there about the heat pumps going up to 55 degrees. What they don't tell you then is to get it up to, we're all used to your thermostat at home isn't at 55 degrees. It is, you frozen, because you need to have the building fabric, needs to be totally insulated, airtight and that. So we need to get that done. So it's the fabric building upgrade is the bit that's costing the money and is going to be the difficult part. The other part we've got with it too is obviously with regard to the funding on this is it's not just for the aesthetics, but you will have to do it. So if you're putting down ceilings and everything else and putting in insulation and everything else, you're still going to put the ceiling back up and all. So that's a cost, and that's more funding that we have to find from elsewhere. And that won't be coming from the SEAI, that will be coming from our own capital resources. So we just need to be aware of that. But the plan with this is to look at it, as you say, it's trying to get it right up that if we could get a building to NZEB, not every building will be able to get to NZEB. What we can put on with the use of solar, the use of the heat pumps, the use of kind of underground source pumps and everything else. So there's an awful lot of options there, but the plan of this is to look at it and see how we can actually get to that. You know, as I said, in conjunction with the SEAI, then they will be providing the same kind of project managers and all to go with the education side of it. We will be investigating then, looking to see then what the actual energy savings are. So the M&R is very important with recording, so that we can actually prove that there are savings in this or whatever else. With regard to the likes of the LEDs, that we can prove that kind of 70% across the board on all our bigger projects and all. So that's the overview, kind of where it's at. The other one then I just wanted to talk to is going a bit off the kind of climate action, is more around the whole strategy. And as I said, it's feeding into now the idea of the estate strategy, is looking at kind of what buildings we do and where we're going to go. So it's kind of going to be the next thing that we're looking at in the first thing with regard to the investments and all money wise. What buildings are we going to? Obviously we want to invest in our own buildings rather than lease buildings. We also want to make sure that the buildings we're investing in are going to meet these targets, 2030 to 2050. Like, so we are looking at what buildings we are now. We all know that there's buildings in the system that are never going to come up to A or B ratings and that. So can we divest it now? Can we reallocate the money and all? It's looking at the overall view of this as to what we can do and what we can invest in, what we should keep, what we should. The other one is obviously that's from the climate side of it, but the other one is from the learning side of it, and from the actual learners themselves. Like, does the facilities work? Like, this most of this building and all are back in the 70s and the 80s at the very latest. They don't meet the kind of the requirements now with regard to digital electronics and everything else. So we need to have a look at the buildings to see, do they still work? What are they? Can we convert them? Can we make them better? Or is it that we need to probably divest them and look for another different investment? The other ones there about the kind of cultural changes, and Sharon and Charlie I think have covered that very well in that, like, the first savings really should be on the ground. It's turning off the lights, doing all the simple things, and if we can get kind of an overall guidelines for all the ETBs on that, and everyone's working from the same kind of thing, and sharing of information and knowledge, that will be definitely the way to go. Life cycle, approach, again, it's this idea of us buying the buildings and equipment and that we're not just looking at the short term, that it's, we're getting the cheapest of the cheap. We need to be getting the cheapest of the cheap, that is the most efficient, and in the long term, it's probably the best item that we're buying, the best aid. So it's looking at that, and also then the use of technology, that we're looking at technology to good. So what I'm looking at there is the likes of the what you call it, energy loggers and all. We can use all of them to our advantage. So just going into a little bit, we're going to fly through this part very quickly. So the SEAI strategy, again, is looking at the demand. Where is the learners? Why is the building in that particular location rather than down the road? What is the links with regard to public transport and all? Like, there's no point in building a super fat college of the future out in the middle of the bog if there's no demand for it. So it's looking first of all at where we need the buildings. What is the right building? How do we convert it? Research on, again, it's the investment. And can we divest of the uneconomic? There's probably a bit of an issue there at the moment because we're still all in under the Department of Education also the first make changes, but we are there with regard to the can we actually look at this and identify the buildings that we do need and we don't need. So that's kind of an overview of that. I'm not going to go into the climate action because Greta Thunberg there, all the learners, this college student, but look at the number of people she's able to bring out now. So climate action is top of people's lists. It's not something that's not there, and different people are acting differently. But I think the incentive is there for to close off, turn off lights. People are invested in this, and we should use that with goodwill and all now to try and actually push this forward, because it is a way of changing the culture around the organisation and around Ireland in general. Again, the life cycle design. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but the grand designs. Big white elephant here that he spent 10 million on, except the wife split up and everything else. They're still not. It's still not done. You have to sell it and all in the end. But we've done a big program on it. But it is that look, we need to keep it within kind of realistic with our investments and everything else. We can't put money into big white elephants. We need to look at what we're invested in and make sure that we're getting bang for our buck. Really. Okay. You're glad to hear my last slide. So technology as an enabler, as I said, there's a lot of good stuff there, and we're probably getting down into kind of the operational side of it as we were talking about. So things like PCs and all the Windows can all shut off the PCs at a particular time, or you get an actual automatic system that will shut all the PCs down. So it's handy for it. Things like LED sensors, energy loggers and everything else give us real-time information to see is the building on Saturday or not. The other alternatives, go by any building at 7 o'clock at night, you see all the lights, especially in the middle of winter, all the lights still on because of the glows from the PC monitors and all. So they're kind of the good things that we can do. CCTV, fire systems, as I said, technology is great, but then on the bad side, we've got things like electronic barriers. Previous job I was in, they managed to put in filing systems. They used to have big wheelie ones in DSP where you used to do them, and they decided that the electronic ones were better. So they spent a fortune on these electronic ones. Turns out couldn't get the parts for them. Health and safety then, because they're electronic barriers and everything else, you have to get them serviced then once a year, every year. The cost of actually, again, the life cycle, it cost actually more. So simple things like the blinds, they decided to put electronic ones in with batteries. So everyone was grand, then they're going, why isn't the remote control work? The battery just needs to change. But it's simple things like that. The automatic window openers, I'm just using an example, I apologize to DDL, but the likes of Colin when we were out looking at it, like one of the health and safety issues was the servers are actually opening the windows. It's connected to a sensor on the thing, but depending on where the actual sensors are located and everything else, you can have the windows open at the wrong time. And the other side there as well is COVID. Obviously, it's very easy to open the window, but with the likes of COVID and everything else, how do you make these automatic systems actually work? So it's just being realistic. So that's kind of my presentation. That's all I have to say. So thank you very much.